Hello everyone, how's your days? I'm doing so well. I'm so happy to prepare every lectures about the Christianity and the Christian music history. It is I feel not only for the knowledge but also your spirit. It is so helpful. So and it is also helpful to have a conception about the music. I mean the Christian music. Nowadays we play music like a contemporary music mostly, but with the understanding of a historical music style, it is better and it is also good for choose a repertoire for the service or activities. So I'm so glad to teach you about the history. So in the previous lecture, we were talking about the early Christian music. So today I'm gonna continue the medieval period to the Christian music, especially with Roman liturgy and the chant. So I'm gonna share the PPT with you. So today I'm going to talk about the Roman liturgy and the chant. Gregorian chant is one of the greatest treasures of the Western civilization. Like Romanesque architecture, it stands as a memorable to religious faith in the Middle Age, embodying the community spirit and the artistic sensibility of the time. This body of chant includes some of the oldest and the most beautiful melodies, and it served as the basis for much later music. As beautiful as the chants are, they cannot be separated from their ceremonial context. We saw in the day 2 lecture how Gregorian chant was codified and notated after centuries of development as an oral tradition and how it played a unifying role in the Western Church. In this chapter, we will relate chant to liturgy and see how each chant is shaped by its role, text, and manner of performance. We will also see how new chants and types of chant were added to the authorized liturgical chant during a wave of creativity around the margins of the repertoire. So this is the timetable for today. So today I'm going to talk about the Roman liturgy, characteristics of chant, genre and the forms of chant, additions to the authorized chant, and Hildegard of Bingen, that she was the composer at that time, and then the continuing presence of chant. This is today's content. So firstly, I'm going to talk about the Roman liturgy. Gregorian chant is music for Christian religious observances. Tunes vary from simple recitation to elaborate melodies, depending on their role in the liturgy. Thus, understanding chant requires some knowledge of the services in which it is used. The Roman liturgy is complex, resulting from a long history of addition and a codification that was largely unknown to those who participate in services. This historical framework can help us comprehend both the shape of the liturgy and the diversity of chant. One purpose of the religious services was to reinforce these lessons for worshippers, making clear the path to salvation through the church's teachings. This purpose was served chiefly by the liturgy, the texts that were spoken or sung, and the rituals that were performed during each service. The role of the music was to carry those words, accompany those liturgy, and inspire the faithful. At the same time, the words, prayers, and singing were directed to God, who was in some respect the primary audience. The daily cycle of services in monasteries and convents, attended only by the participants, reflected the belief that humans on earth, like the angels in heaven, should offer unceasing praise to God. So now I'm gonna share one video about explaining medieval church. So this video is so helpful to understand what is the church system at the time. So please pay attention to that.
From the chaos after the Middle Ages, feudalism arose to create order. Another institution that created order in medieval society was the Roman Catholic Church. In this list, I will discuss 5 important concepts: clergy, sacraments, cathedrals, universities, and monasticism. Historians sometimes call the Middle Ages the Age of Faith, where religion was a center part of life in medieval Europe, as it had an influence on almost everything. The first topic in this week's list is clergy. The clergy were the church officials in the Roman Catholic Church. Examples of this would include the Pope, cardinals, archbishops, bishops, priests, monks, and nuns. A priest would run a group of followers called a parish. A bishop would run a group of followers called a diocese, and an archbishop would control an archdiocese. Each member of the clergy had certain duties and responsibilities for followers they presided over. The Pope was the head of the Catholic Church and had more power than any king or queen of medieval Europe. For example, even the Holy Roman Emperor, Henry IV, had to beg the Pope for forgiveness in the snow for 3 days after a disagreement. The next term is sacrament. A sacrament is a Christian rite or tradition. There is some disagreement in the Christian Church on which sacraments are mentioned in the Bible, but I will focus on the Roman Catholic Church in this video. The 7 sacraments are baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, penance, anointing the sick, marriage, and holy orders. According to Christians, baptism cleanses people of original sin. A priest pours water over a person's head in a baptismal fountain. Confirmation is a formal declaration of a Christian's belief in God. Eucharist, also known as communion, is where the priest blesses the bread and wine. Catholics believe it becomes the body and blood of Christ. Matrimony is a formal union in which a couple gets blessed by the church in a ceremony. The marriage is recorded in the records. Holy orders is a ceremony of becoming a priest. Penance, also called confession, you might have seen this in movies, it's where someone confesses their sins to a priest in order to be forgiven. Extreme unction is the blessing of the sick and dying, also known as last rites. A priest anoints with holy water. Third on the list, we have the term cathedral. A cathedral is a large church, usually headed by a bishop. These large religious buildings dotted the medieval world, and they are the prominent building in many medieval towns. Here's an example of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Here it is before the fire, and then after the fire that happened in 2019. Another example of a cathedral is Chartres Cathedral outside of Paris. Notice the two different spires. They were built at different times. Other features of a cathedral include stained glass windows and gargoyles. Gargoyles were decorative stone sculptures used as rain gutters or on the edges of cathedral roofs. This was a reminder that the devil and evil spirits would catch them if they did not obey the church. Some cathedrals took over 100 years to build. For example, La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona has been under construction for 100 years and will not be finished until 2026. Fourth on the list for the influence of the Roman Catholic Church in medieval society are universities. Many universities sprung from religious institutions such as monasteries or cathedral schools. Most of the education in these universities was done in Latin. It was the primary language to teach lessons and to write texts. One of the oldest universities is located in Bologna, Italy. It was founded in 1088. Cambridge University in England was founded in 1209. Oxford University was founded in 1096. The last term on the list is monasticism. Monasticism is a devotion of your entire life to religion to focus on prayer and religious service. Men became monks and lived in a monastery. Women became nuns and lived in a convent or nunnery. In this picture, we see the famous Orthodox monastery in Meteora, Greece. These monasteries were built on the top of large boulders to isolate the monks. Some monks even went so far as to live isolated as hermits to devote their entire lives to God. Most monasteries are built around a cloister. A cloister is a covered walkway surrounded by a square. On the sides you have the dormitory, kitchen, and dining hall, and the scriptorium where monks could decorated things called illuminated manuscripts. In review of this week's Peppy list, we covered 5 terms: clergy, sacraments, cathedrals, universities, and monasticism.
Yeah, this video said so many system of the Catholic Church at the time. So we don't need to know about the Catholic Church system in medieval. Still not. We don't need to know, but we need to understand the system at the time for understanding music at the time. So that is the basement of the development for the contemporary music, right? So that's the better to know about the music. No, I mean the music and the system at the time. So I'm going to continue to talk about it. So thus, the liturgy and the music of the Roman Church had dual aims. The first is addressing God, and the second is reinforcing the faith of those in attendance. So part of teaching Christianity was repeating the stories of Jesus and of saints, exemplary the Christians whom the church raised up as mothers of faith or action. Every year, the church commemorated each event or the saint with a feast day in a cycle known as the church calendar. The most important feasts are, of course, Christmas and Easter. So I'm going to share another video. Is about the liturgical year and the liturgical calendar. So for your understanding of what is that what is the church calendar. we still use the calendar, especially for the Christmas and Easter and the Thanksgiving like that. So this is the August 2022's the calendar. Like that, they start to use the calendar at the time in the medieval era. So this is the video. Yeah, so for now, I'm going to talk about the Roman Mass. So if you have the textbook, look at the page number 35, 34, and 35. It is to help to understand what is the Mass. Yeah, on the screen, I have the same thing. So if you look at and the list, just read carefully, and then you can understand what it is. So the most important service in the Roman Church is the Mass, which evolved from the commemorations of the Last Supper of Jesus with his disciples. The central act is a symbolic reenactment of the Last Supper in which a priest consecrates bread and wine and transformed in essence into the body and the blood of Christ and offers them to worshippers in communion. Over time, other ritual actions and the words were added, including prayers, Bible readings, and the psalm singing. The Mass is performed every day in monasteries, convents, and major churches. On Sundays in all churches and more than once on the main feast days. In such a space, the Mass begins with the entrance procession of the celebrant and his assistants to the altar, incense, the wafting, through the air. The choir sings a psalm named the introit. So you can see the introit on the screen. All the board words are or sung by choir or the solist. So another things are just spoken line. So in such a space, the Mass begins with the entrance of a procession of the celebration. So it's an introit. And then after all are in place, the choir continued with the Kyrie, whose threefold invocations of Kyrie eleison captures the hopes of the worshippers and symbolize the Trinity of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. On Sundays and the feast days, there follows the Gloria, a formula of the praise of God to God that sum up the doctrine of the Trinity, and again asked for mercy. The priest then intones the collect, a prayer on behalf of all those present. After these introductory items, the next section of the Mass focused on Bible readings, florid chant, and the church teachings. Here the service offers instruction, familiarizing the worshippers with the scriptures and the central tenets of the faith. So first, the subdeacon intones the epistles for the day, a passage from the letters of the apostles. Next come two elaborate chants sung by a soloist or with choir, the Gradual and Alleluia, both based on psalm texting. So these chants are the musical high points of the Gregorian Mass, performed when no ritual is taking place and text and the music are the center of attention. On Sundays in the Easter season, the Gradual is replaced by another Alleluia as a sign of a celebration. During Lent, the joyful Alleluia is omitted or replaced by the more solemn tract, a florid setting of several verses from a psalm. On some occasion, the choir sings as a sequence after the Alleluia. The deacon then intones the gospel, a reading from one of the 4 books of the New Testament that relate the life of Jesus. The priest may offer a sermon. On Sundays and the important feast days, this section of the Mass concludes with the Credo, a statement of faith summarizing church doctrine and telling the story of Jesus in incarnation, crucifixion, and the resurrection. Next, the priest turns from the words to actions as he prepares the bread and wine for communion. The choir sings the offertory, a florid chant on a psalm. There follow spoken prayers and the secret read in silence by the priest. The preface, a dialogue between priest and the choir, leads into the Sanctus, whose text begins with the angelic choir of praise from the vision of Isaiah. The priest speaks the canon, the core of the mass that includes the consecration of bread and wine. He sings the Lord's Prayer, and the choir sings the Agnus Dei, which, like the Kyrie, was adapted from Litany. In the medieval mass, the priest then takes the communion, consuming the bread and the wine on the behalf of all those assembled, rather than sharing it with everyone, as was the custom earlier. After communion, the choir sings the communion based on the psalm. The priest intones the post-communion prayer, and the priest or deacon concludes the service by singing Item Missa Est. So I'm gonna share the video of singing the mass, the essential singing in mass, like a Kyrie eleison, Gloria, Sanctus, Agnus Dei, always sung by the choir and the soloist. So please listen carefully. This is the Gregorian style singing, but yeah, but it was going to be larger and larger. So like the Mozart and Beethoven, Haydn will compose, the mass styles of the big masterpiece with the Kyrie, the Gloria, Alleluia, Sanctus, Agnus Dei. This is the Kyrie eleison. This is the Gloria. This is a new state. Yeah, I'm so happy to share this so beautiful music. So can you understand what it is? So this is the timetable for the ordinary and the proper the mass. So still Catholic Church do the with that kind of system with the singing. And they had another service style that the name is the office. It's like every day, every time, the monks and the priests, they do the prayer, the singing in the service named the office. So early Christians often prayed and sang psalms at the regular times throughout the day and the night. In private or public gathering, these observances were codified in the office, a series of 8 services that since the early Middle Ages have been celebrated daily at the specified times. The office was particularly important in monasteries and convents, where the mass and office observance occupied several hours every day and night. All members of the community sang in the services. Office observances included several psalms, each with an antiphon, a chant sung before and after the psalm. Lessons with the musical responses called responsories, hymns, canticles, poetic passages from parts of the Bible other than the book of the Psalms, and the prayers. So it's not easy to understand what is the office. So I'm going to show you what is the office and what the monks do at the time. So it is so hard to understand what is the office. So this video is from the Mount
Saint Benedict calls the hours of prayer that the monks have, he uses the global term for that, the Opus Dei, the work of God is how that translates. Today the Church calls the same thing the Liturgy of the Hours. Saint Benedict doesn't use that term, although Liturgy of the Hours is a good way of naming what's happening. It's liturgy at different hours. Saint Benedict's name is perhaps hides a deeper reality of what's happening. At all the different hours of the day, the monks come together for prayer, and the idea is to sanctify that hour of the day. Saint Benedict's arrangement is inspired by a line from one of the Psalms that he quotes in the Holy Rule, where he says, 7 times a day I praise you, O Lord, and in the night I rise to sing your praises. And so Benedict arranged these different hours of prayer, and that was a work. It was the work of God. You can understand it as a work done for God, but I said there's something hidden in the phrase. It's also a work that God does in the monks, and it's a work he does in the world through the monks, the various hours of the prayer. I like St. Paul's phrase for what my vocation as a monk is, what our vocation is, where he says that you are called to the praise of God's glory. And so all these hours spread throughout the day, ultimately their origin is the praise of God. And we use the Psalms primarily as the text of our prayer. We use the Psalms primarily, and the Psalms are full of praise, but praise is accompanied by other attitudes of prayer as well. When one comes into the presence of God, which St. Benedict says when monks are praying together in the choir, they need to be mindful that they're in the presence of God. When monks come into the presence of God to sing His glory, we're immediately mindful also of our unworthiness to be there. We become aware in that presence of our sinfulness, and so prayer also is a plea for mercy and forgiveness. Prayer also is a plea for protection. Prayer also rejoices in being called to be in God's presence. It asks for strength to be faithful to God. It recounts again and again before God that we know the wonderful things He's done for us.
they start to have a
Lord, open my lips,
and then they sing.
and my mouth shall declare your praise. O Lord, open my lips,
With the different
and my mouth shall declare your praise.
The different hours of the day, the first hour of the day is vigils.
So now you can understand what is the office. So each office time, as you see, they sing that kind of songs with the different lyrics. So now I'm going to continue with characteristics of chant. So Gregorian chant are very diverse in style, with varying approaches to performance, treatment of the text, and the melodic character. These stylistic differences reflect the disparate functions and the histories of the items in the liturgy, and will help guide us through the genre of chant. Singers use three manners of the performance for chant. First is responsorial, in which a soloist alternates with the choir or congregation. And second is antiphonal, in which two groups or halves of the choir alternate, and the direct without alternate. So central genre of the chant are traditionally associated with each manner of performance, although the way some chants are sung has changed over time. So, given the varied styles and histories of the chant for the mass and the office, it will be helpful to treat them in broad categories, beginning with the syllabic types, proceeding to numeric and melismatic ones, and considering the mass ordinary chant separately at the end. Each type of chant has a distinguished form in both text and music, and a particular way to perform it. While examining the chant, we should not lose sight of who sings them and in what place in the liturgy, since these factors explain the differences in music style. The simplest chants are the formulas for intoning prayers and the Bible readings, such as the collect, epistle, and the gospel. Here, the music's sole function is to project the words clearly without embellishment, so the formulas are spare and almost entirely syllabic. The text is a chant on a reciting note, usually A or C, with brief motifs marking the end of phrases, sentences, and the entire reading. Some formulas also begin a phrase with a rise to the reciting note. These recitation formulas are quite old, predating the system of modes, and are not assigned to any mode. So they are sung by the priest or an assistant, with occasional responses from the choir or congregation. Priests were not necessarily trained singers, and they had a lot of tests to recite, so it makes sense that their melodies were simple and in a very limited range. Slightly more complex are the psalm tones, formulas for singing psalms in the office. These are designed so they can be adapted to fit any psalm. There is one psalm tone for each of the 8 modes, using the most receding tone as a note for reciting most of the text. These psalm tones are still used today in Catholic, Anglican, and other churches, continuing a practice that is well over 1200 years old. Example shows the first psalm for Vespers on Christmas Day, Dixit Dominus, based on the Psalm 109 in the Latin Bible and the 110 in the Hebrew scriptures and the most modern translations using the tone 1. So I'm gonna share you what is the Dixit Dominus. So this is
Dixit Dominus Dominum meo, sede ad extris mei, donec polam inimicos tuos, scaberum pegum tuorum, Dominus ex nihilo, dominare in medio inimicorum tuorum. Tecum principium in die virtutis tuae in splendoribus sanctorum, ex utero ante Luciferum genuite. Gloria Patri et Filio, et Spiritui Sancto, sic ut erat in principio et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. Tecum principium.
So this is the deceit Dominus. Yeah, as you see, the example illustrate the each psalm tone consider of an intonation, a rising motive used only to begin the first verse, recitation on the receding tone of the mode, the median, a cadence for the middle of each verse, further recitation and the termination of final cadence for each verse. And an office psalm or canticle is not complete in itself, but is preceded and followed by an antiphon. Since the cycle of the 150 psalms is sung every week, while the antiphon varies with each day in the church calendar, each psalm is framed by many different antiphons during the year. The text of the antiphon, whether from the Bible or newly written, often refers to the event specific ceremonial context. On the Christmas Day, the first psalm at the Vespers is paired with the antiphon Tecum Principium. Here, the text for the antiphon is the first verse of the psalm, whose image of the dominant strength and the divine parentage that were understood by Christians to herald the birth of the Jesus being celebrated at this Vespers service. So I'm going to share that what is the Tecum Principium.
Tecum principium in die virtutis tuae in splendoribus sanctorum ex utero ante Luciferum genuite. Dixit Dominus Dominum.
Yeah, after the Tecum Principium, and then they continue to sing Dixit Dominus. So it is so connected. And I'm going to talk about the office hymns, especially with the example of Christ Redemptor Omnium. Hymns are the most familiar type of sacred song, practiced in almost all branches of Christianity from ancient time to the present. The choir sings a hymn in every office service. Hymns are strophic, consisting of several stanzas that are all sung to the same melody. Stanzas may be 4 to 7 lines long, and some include rhythms. Melodies often repeat one or more phrases, producing a variety of patterns. The hymn Christe Redemptor Omnium, sung at the Vesper on Christmas Day, welcomes the birth of Christ as Redeemer, begotten by God, who took on human form and came to save the world. Like most Gregorian hymns, it has one note on most syllables with 2 or 3 notes on others. So, also I'm going to share the Christe Redemptor Omnium. I think this music is more powerful than the contemporary music like that, because the contemporary music is more easier and more fun, but that kind of a music, I mean Gregorian chant, has the powerfully, you know, deliver our emotion to directly to God. So this is so elaborate melodies and, you know, unison singing is, I feel like this is more powerful and so beautiful for me. So next, I'm going to talk about the additions to the authorized chant. So even after the chant repertoire began to be standardized in about the 9th century, church musicians continued to add to it. Besides composing new melodies for the mass or ordinary and the revising office services, they supplied music whenever a new saint day, commemoration, or other feast was added to the calendar, creating new chants or adapting existing ones for the days of mass proper and office. So more than 50 composers known by name and hundreds of anonymous ones composed such chants, most for observances in honor of a local saint. Moreover, church musicians developed three new types of chant as addition to the authorized liturgy. These are tropes, sequences, and the liturgical dramas. So first, a trope expanded an existing chant in one of three ways by adding the firstly new word and the music before the chant or before each phrase of the chant. Secondly, melody only, extending melismas or adding new ones, or text only, set to existing melismas. All three types increased the solemnity of the chant by enlarging it, and all offer the musicians an outlet for creativity and in the margins of the authorized repertoire. Paralleling the way medieval scholars sometimes added commentary in the margin of the Bible text. Moreover, the added words provide a gloss, an explanatory note or comment that interprets the chant text and usually links it more closely to the occasion. So second one is a sequence. The sequence was a genre popular from the last 9 through the 13th century in the region, including France, England, Germany, Switzerland, northern Italy, and Spain. Sequences are sung after the Alleluia at the Mass and are set syllabically to a text that is mostly in couplet. Early sequences are in prose, later ones more often poetic with regular meter and rhyme. Like tropes, none in more elaborate languages, sequences elaborate on the themes of the service of which they are a part. Both tropes and the sequence were additions to the liturgy, but while tropes were attached to existing chant, sequence were freestanding chant. So the last one is the liturgical dramas. Such dialogues that were added to the liturgy have become known from the church with the procession and the stylized actions The Easter and the Christmas dialogues were the most common and were performed all over Europe. Several other plays survived from the 12th century and later that enact the event commemorated in the church year. Some performed within the liturgy and the others staged separately. These include templates in the codex from the Benedictine monastery of the Pleur in the central France, and the early 13th century plate of Daniel from Beauvais. The music for these plays consists of the number of the chants sung together, sometimes joined by songs in more secular styles. All parts, even women's roles, were usually sung by the male clergy and choir, except in a few locales where nuns participate. So this kind of culture is still existed in the church, like in Christmas and Easter. Usually youth make a play with the music. So that was the origin of the that kind of a play. So for the understanding, I'm prepare the video of the liturgical dramas in from the 12th century, named Saint Nicholas drama. So yeah, please enjoy them.
Représentons comment Saint Nicolas sauva le fils de Gétron des mains de Marmorinus, roi du peuple d'Agar.
cordis anxietas, nemo poteste mihi tolere, quam diute conferi perdere.
Yeah, this is a liturgical drama. So as you watch the video, at the time people like the liturgical drama because not only the beautiful music but also entertainment. They were enjoy the music and the play because it was not only the just the worship. It is like they can enjoy the pray and that they can understand the Bible story. So that it was so famous at the time. So now I'm going to talk about Hildegard of Bingen. She was a nun, and she is so important, one of the important composer in the medieval period. So please look at the textbook, the page 38 and 39. So please understand that who is she and that what she did. So at the time, women were excluded from the priesthood, and as the choir took over the singing in services, women were silenced in church. But in convent, they could hold the positions of leadership, except for the officiating at the mass and participate fully in singing and composing music. So, as in monasteries, convent life revolved around singing the 8 daily office service and the mass. Here, women learned to read Latin and music and had access to an intellectual life available to few women outside convent worlds. In this context, Hildegard of Bingen achieved great success as abbess of her own convent and as a writer and composer. There are more surviving chants by Hildegard than by any other composer from the entire Middle Ages. Most of her songs, for which she composed both words and the music, praise the Virgin Mary, the Trinity, or local saints. Her words, mostly composed for office services, vary from the syllabic hymns to highly melismatic responsories. Hildegard's most extended musical work is Ordo Virtutum, a sacred music drama in verse with 82 songs. It is a morality play with allegorical characters, including the prophets, the virtues, the happy soul and unhappy souls, and the penitent soul, in which the female virtues lead the fallen soul back to the community of the faithful. All sing in a plain chant except the devil, a devil who can only speak. The absence of music symbolized his separation from God. The final chorus of the virtue and the souls is typical of Hildegard's expansive and individual melodies. So I'm preparing the one song in the Ordo Virtutum named in Principio Omnes. So you can see the Hildegard, the style. This music is so mysterious. Melody line is so beautiful. We can feel the atmosphere of the place, especially about the virtue. So today's last section is that the continuing presence of chant. Gregorian chant was important in itself and for its influence on other music. It was used in Christian services throughout Central and Western Europe until the Reformation and in Catholic areas after that. Most of the people in this area heard it at least weekly. It remained the principal activity of the professional singers until the end of the 16th century. Chant was reformed in the late 16th century and the early 17th century, and again in the late 19th century and early 20th century. But the Second Vatican Council of 1962 to 65, in an effort to engage congregations more directly in worship, permit holding Catholic services in local languages rather than in Latin. Yet, the importance of the Gregorian chant for later music goes beyond its presence in the pieces directly based on it. Chant was a part of the musical world of most Europeans for over 1,000 years, and it deeply influenced their sense of how melodies should be shaped and how music should go. Or later music in the Western tradition bears its imprint. So that means it's gonna continue to the, even though the Reformation happened, they accepted that system and they start to develop the system to more like for their church. So this is the beginning, and next time I'm going to talk about the polyphony through the 13th century. The people that, as you see, the Gregorian chant doesn't have the harmony, but these songs are all unison singing. But from the 13th century, they start to compose polyphony style. Meaning is, they divide the voice types. So I'm gonna talk about it. So please have a good week and see you next time. Thank you.